Did you know that grocery bills for the average American family have already climbed 23% since the beginning of 2025? Experts are warning that we're heading into the largest food price crisis in modern history. August could be your final opportunity to stockpile 11 essential foods before costs soar and store shelves are stripped bare. This isn't guesswork. It's backed by USDA data, supply chain reports, and insider warnings from food distributors who are quietly sounding the alarm. I've spent weeks digging through reports, speaking with warehouse managers, and analyzing shipping manifests. What I discovered is deeply concerning. By September, conditions will align into a perfect storm. Extreme weather devastating crops in key regions, transportation costs jumping 34% due to fuel shortages, and processing plants operating below capacity because of delayed shipments of crucial parts from overseas. Put together, it all points to soaring prices and widespread shortages. The good news is that there's still time to prepare. The 11 foods I'm about to reveal were carefully chosen based on price stability, supply chain vulnerabilities, and nutritional value. Stocking them now is not panic buying. It's a smart strategy to hedge against inflation. Families who prepare ahead will be eating at today's prices instead of tomorrow's inflated ones. And stay with me until the end, because I'll also share a simple storage method that can extend shelf life by up to 300% for less than $20. Plus the one overlooked food item that could keep your family fed for months if supply chains collapse. Let's start with the first must-have item before August ends. Number 1. Rice, the backbone of survival eating. Now, I know what you're thinking. Rice? Really? That's the big revelation? But hear me out, because what's happening in the rice market right now is beyond alarming, and hardly anyone realizes what's coming. According to the latest International Rice Research Institute report, global rice production is experiencing its worst crisis in 4 decades. The numbers are staggering. Thailand, which provides 30% of U.S. imported rice, just reported a 45% drop in harvests due to severe drought. Vietnam's exports have fallen 60% after typhoons battered key growing regions, storms that scientists are calling once-in-a-century events. But here's the part that should truly scare you. India, the world's largest rice exporter, has just enforced emergency export restrictions on several varieties to protect its domestic food supply. When India stops shipping rice, global markets don't just shift, they erupt. Wholesale rice prices have already jumped 28% in the past month alone, and retail prices are scrambling to catch up. A warehouse distributor in Texas told me something chilling. Major grocery chains are already putting quiet purchase limits on rice. Not obvious signs, but subtle restrictions designed to prevent panic buying. They're preparing for shortages that the public hasn't even heard about yet. Here's what most people don't understand about rice. It's not just a side dish. It's the primary calorie base for over half the global population. 1 pound of rice provides around 1,750 calories. That means a single 20-pound bag contains enough energy to feed one person for nearly 3 weeks. At today's prices, that's survival insurance for under $15. But not all rice is equal when it comes to storage. Brown rice, while more nutritious, contains oils that spoil in as little as 6 months. White rice, when stored correctly, can last for decades, 20, 30, even 40 years. NASA studies confirm that white rice kept in oxygen-free storage retains its nutritional value and remains safe for consumption for multiple decades. The real threats to rice storage aren't time, but moisture and insects. Tiny rice weevils and moths can destroy your entire stockpile in a matter of weeks. Thankfully, the solution is simple and inexpensive. Food-grade buckets with tight lids, oxygen absorber packets, and bay leaves. Oxygen absorbers remove the air that bugs need to survive, while bay leaves act as a natural repellent. My recommendation is straightforward. Store at least 40 pounds of rice per person in your household. That's only 2 20-pound bags per person. At today's cost, you're looking at about $60 per person for months of food security. That may sound like an overwhelming amount, but in reality, it's just two 20-pound bags for each person. At current prices, you're investing around $60 per person for months of reliable food security. When rice prices inevitably double or even triple, as experts predict, you'll be glad you prepared early. But timing is critical. Importers are already warning that upcoming shipments from Asia are being sold at premium rates just to secure contracts. By September, those costs will show up on retail shelves. By October, rice prices could reach levels that shock every shopper. Number 2. Dried beans and legumes, the hidden protein powerhouses. If rice is your calorie base, beans are your lifeline for protein. Right now, the bean market is experiencing disruptions that mainstream media has almost completely ignored. Mexico provides more than 40% of America's imported beans. But this year, extreme weather devastated their growing regions. Northern Mexico's drought has slashed black bean yields by roughly 55%, and pinto bean production has fallen 38%. The limited supply that remains is being held for domestic use, not exported. U.S. production isn't faring much better. Montana, North Dakota, and Nebraska, the country's primary bean producers, faced spring flooding followed by harsh drought. The result? Domestic bean supplies are now at their lowest levels since 1987. What makes this shortage different from past crises is demand. Beans are no longer just survival food. The plant-based protein trend has triggered massive purchases by restaurants, manufacturers, and health-conscious consumers. Families are now competing with bulk industrial buyers purchasing beans by the ton. Nutritionally, beans are extraordinary. A single cup of cooked black beans delivers 15 grams of protein, plus fiber, folate, potassium, and iron. Compare that to meat, which costs about 4 times more per gram of protein and requires refrigeration. Beans are essentially nature's perfect survival food. And with proper storage, dried beans can last 10 to 30 years. The key is keeping them completely dry and oxygen-free. My preferred method is the same as with rice: food-grade buckets and oxygen absorbers. Here's a little-known pro tip. Freeze beans for 48 hours before long-term storage. This kills any insect eggs that could hatch and destroy your supply later. When stockpiling, choose a variety your family will actually eat. Black beans for Mexican-style meals, navy beans for soups, chickpeas for Mediterranean dishes, and kidney beans for chili. Don't just buy one type in bulk. Variety prevents food fatigue and supports balanced nutrition in long emergencies. Cooking is another factor. Beans take longer and use more water compared to rice, but there's a game-changing solution: pressure cooking. It cuts cooking time from hours to minutes while using about 70% less fuel. If fuel becomes expensive or power outages are frequent, this efficiency could make the difference between staying nourished and going hungry. My recommendation is to store at least 25 pounds of mixed beans per person. That's just 5 5-pound bags per family member. At today's wholesale prices, that's roughly $40 per person for a protein source that can sustain families through prolonged supply disruptions. Number 3. Wheat flour and alternatives, the baking crisis nobody anticipated. While public attention is fixed on rice and beans, the wheat industry is silently undergoing the most severe supply shock in modern agriculture. And the timing couldn't be worse. Russia and Ukraine, together responsible for about 30% of global wheat exports, have seen their production and shipping infrastructure crippled by ongoing conflict. Since January, wheat prices have already jumped 42%. But the situation goes deeper. Canada, the largest wheat supplier to the U.S., has just reported its weakest harvest in 15 years due to record-breaking heat waves and punishing drought across its prairie provinces. Here's the truly frightening part. Major flour mills across the Midwest are running at reduced capacity because of equipment breakdowns and a lack of replacement parts. I spoke with a mill operator in Kansas who admitted their machines date back to the 1970s and are being kept alive with spare parts and pure luck. Industry insiders warn it's only a matter of time before these mills fail completely. And when that happens, flour shortages won't be a matter of weeks, but months. The mistake most people make is assuming all flour is the same. Regular all-purpose flour lasts 12 to 18 months under good conditions, but properly stored white wheat flour can last 8 to 12 years. The difference comes down to oils. Whole wheat flour contains natural oils that turn rancid quickly, while refined white flour is mostly starch, giving it far greater longevity. When it comes to storage, flour's biggest enemies are moisture, heat, and insects. But there's a method commercial bakeries use that most households overlook. Vacuum sealing flour in small bags before placing them in containers. This prevents air exposure, protects against mold, and greatly extends shelf life. Here's a money-saving hack. Skip expensive Mylar bags. Instead, wash out 2-liter soda bottles, fill them with flour, drop in an oxygen absorber, and twist the cap tight. These bottles are durable, airtight, stack neatly, and keep flour in portioned amounts, so you don't risk exposing your entire supply every time you bake. Don't stop at standard flour. Diversify with alternatives that most families overlook. Coconut flour lasts up to 3 years and offers excellent nutrition. Almond flour, though pricey, is becoming scarce as nut harvests shrink. Rice flour provides gluten-free options and stores exceptionally well. My strategy is simple. 50 pounds of white all-purpose flour per person, plus 10 pounds of mixed alternatives. That's just 10 5-pound bags of regular flour and a few specialty options. At current prices, it's about $75 per person for years of baking security. Number 4. Canned proteins. Your insurance policy for meat during uncertain times. Let me share a story from a grocery distribution hub in Ohio last month. Their weekly meat delivery was short by 60%, not because of shipping delays, but because there wasn't enough meat being produced to meet demand. The American meat industry is in crisis. Cattle herds are now at their smallest since 1962, the result of prolonged drought across ranching states. Feed corn prices have soared 89% in just 18 months, forcing ranchers to cull animals they can't afford to feed. Processing plants are barely hanging on with skeleton crews thanks to labor shortages and mechanical failures. Here's the nightmare. Fresh meat prices have already risen 67% since 2023, and experts expect another 45% increase by the end of this year. But canned proteins have stayed relatively stable, largely because they're processed differently and sourced from international markets as well as domestic. Nutritionally, canned meat holds up far better than people think. The canning process actually preserves more nutrients than fresh meat that's been shipped and stored for weeks. Canned chicken retains 96% of its protein, while canned salmon often has higher omega-3 content than fresh fish, thanks to concentrated oils during processing. Here's a cost comparison that may shock you. A single can of premium chicken breast packs 25 grams of protein for about $3. That same amount of protein from fresh chicken now costs $8 to $12 depending on location. That's a 300% price difference for equal nutrition with years of safe storage. And when it comes to storage, canned proteins are nearly indestructible. Properly made cans remain safe and nutritious 5 to 10 years beyond their printed dates if kept in cool, dry conditions. Properly manufactured cans can remain safe and retain their nutritional value for 5 to 10 years beyond the printed expiration date. The key is to store them in cool, dry areas, away from drastic temperature swings. Personally, I keep mine in a basement room where the temperature stays steady at about 65 degrees year-round. But here's something important. Variety matters, both for nutrition and morale. Stock up on canned chicken, beef, salmon, tuna, and sardines. Don't forget about canned turkey and ham either, which offer different flavors and cooking options. Sardines might not sound appealing, but they're nutritional giants, packed with complete amino acids and natural omega-3s that would cost a fortune if bought as supplements. My approach is simple. 30 cans of mixed proteins per person. That breaks down to about 6 cans each of chicken, beef, salmon, tuna, and sardines. At today's prices, that's around $90 per person for a protein safety net that could sustain your household through extended supply chain breakdowns. Number 5. Cooking oils and fats. Liquid gold in a crisis. What I'm about to share about the global cooking oil market will completely change how you think about this pantry staple. Since early 2024, vegetable oil prices have skyrocketed 156% worldwide, making them one of the fastest rising food commodities on the planet. The reasons are staggering. Indonesia, which produces 60% of the world's palm oil, has cut exports to secure its own food supply. Argentina's soybean oil output collapsed after devastating droughts. Sunflower oil from Eastern Europe is still limited due to ongoing conflicts. Meanwhile, North America's canola oil production has fallen 35% thanks to crop failures across Canada's growing regions. Here's something most consumers don't realize. Food manufacturers are quietly changing their recipes to cope. That bag of chips that used to be fried in pure sunflower oil, now it's made with cheaper blends of low-quality oils. Your favorite salad dressing? Reformulated multiple times this year alone to manage fluctuating costs. But oils aren't just for cooking. In survival scenarios, they become multi-use tools. Coconut oil doubles as an antibacterial treatment, emergency candle fuel, and even skin protection. Olive oil works as a natural food preservative and can be burned in lamps during blackouts. Storage, however, is more complicated than most people think. Each oil type has a different shelf life. Coconut oil can last up to 5 years if stored correctly. Extra virgin olive oil stays fresh for about 3 years in dark, stable conditions. Vegetable oils generally last 2 years, but refined oils like canola can stretch to 4 years when stored properly. Here's a technique commercial kitchens rely on that most households overlook. Portion control. Instead of one large gallon jug, buy several smaller bottles. Every time you open a container, oxidation begins to break the oil down. Smaller bottles mean the majority of your supply remains sealed and protected until needed. Temperature is critical. Keep oils in a cool, dark environment between 60 degrees and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat speeds up rancidity, while light destroys key nutrients. Personally, I use a dedicated pantry closet that stays cool and dark all year. Focus on versatile oils with multiple uses. Coconut oil for high-heat cooking and emergency applications. Olive oil for flavor and preservation. Vegetable oil for everyday cooking and baking. Skip specialty oils with short shelf lives and limited uses. My rule of thumb is at least 1 gallon of mixed oils per person. That's just 4 quart bottles each. At today's prices, that's about $50 per person for cooking flexibility that guarantees you can prepare meals even when fresh ingredients are scarce or unaffordable. Number 6. Salt and essential seasonings. The flavor foundation that's rapidly disappearing. And here's something that may sound unbelievable until you see the data. Road salt reserves across 15 states have already dropped to dangerously low levels. And food-grade salt is heading the same way. The flavor foundation of every kitchen is now under threat. America is experiencing a salt shortage so severe that municipalities in 15 states are reporting critically low reserves. And food-grade salt is following the same path. According to the Salt Institute, domestic salt production has fallen 23% since 2023 due to mining issues, equipment breakdowns, and transportation bottlenecks. The numbers don't stop there. Canada, our largest salt supplier, has reduced exports by 31% to build up its own reserves. And here's the harsh reality. The U.S. imports over 40% of its salt from countries now prioritizing their domestic needs. This isn't just about bland food, it's about food safety. Without salt, our ability to preserve meats, vegetables, and other perishables during extended emergencies becomes severely limited. While researching industrial salt use, I found something fascinating. Food manufacturers are quietly reformulating recipes to use less salt because they can't secure stable, affordable supplies. That frozen dinner you bought last year with bold flavor? The formula has been watered down because companies couldn't guarantee enough salt for consistency. Here's the good news. Salt itself is nearly eternal. Pure salt never expires. Archaeologists have uncovered deposits preserved for centuries that remain perfectly usable. The catch? Table salt often contains iodine and anti-caking agents, which can degrade over time. Pure sea salt or rock salt, however, maintains its properties indefinitely when stored properly. Each type of salt serves a specific purpose in an emergency. Table salt is best for everyday seasoning and general preservation. Sea salt supplies trace minerals, especially useful if your diet becomes limited. Kosher salt is excellent for curing meats because of its larger crystals. Pink Himalayan salt contains over 80 trace minerals that may become critical during nutritional shortages. There's an old preservation technique our grandparents relied on: salt curing. Using traditional methods, 1 pound of salt can preserve up to 10 pounds of fresh meat for months without refrigeration. In a world of supply chain disruptions, this knowledge could mean the difference between having protein security or going hungry. Storage is simple but important. Keep salt in airtight containers away from moisture. I store 25 pounds at a time in food-grade buckets with tight lids. Salt naturally absorbs moisture, causing clumping, but it doesn't spoil. To prevent clumps and keep it flowing freely, add a few grains of rice to each container. Don't overlook seasonings either. Garlic powder, onion powder, black pepper, and paprika can turn plain rice and beans into meals your family will actually enjoy. In long emergencies, morale matters just as much as nutrition. My recommendation is to stock at least 10 pounds of salt per person, along with a selection of essential spices. That breaks down to about 6 pounds of table salt, 2 pounds of sea salt, and 2 pounds of specialty salts. Add basic seasonings, and you're looking at just $35 per person for flavor security that could last decades. Number 7. Honey and natural sweeteners. Nature's eternal preservation system. What I'm about to tell you about honey will completely change the way you see this golden resource. Since 2023, global honey production has collapsed by 34% due to massive bee colony failures, an event scientists are calling the worst die-off in recorded history. The crisis stretches beyond honey itself. Bees pollinate crops worth over $15 billion annually in the U.S. As colonies collapse, we're losing both honey production and essential crop yields at the same time. Commercial beekeepers are reporting colony losses between 60% and 80% in some areas. Pesticides, climate change, and parasitic mites are creating a deadly perfect storm for bee populations. The few remaining colonies are being redirected toward crop pollination rather than honey, driving supplies even lower. What makes honey unique among all sweeteners is its longevity. It never spoils, ever. Archaeologists have uncovered jars of honey in Egyptian tombs that remained perfectly edible after more than 3,000 years. Honey preserves itself naturally thanks to its low moisture content and the hydrogen peroxide it produces, creating an antimicrobial environment. It is quite literally a self-preserving food. But there's a huge issue in today's market: fake honey. Recent FDA testing revealed that over 40% of imported honey is adulterated with corn syrup or other additives. These imitations lack honey's preservation qualities and nutritional benefits. What looks like survival food that should last forever may actually be sugar syrup that spoils within months. That's why authenticity is key. Always look for raw, unfiltered honey, ideally sourced from local beekeepers. Genuine honey crystallizes naturally over time, which is actually proof of purity. Fake honey stays liquid indefinitely because it's mostly syrup. True honey also carries unique flavors depending on the flowers the bees visited, while counterfeit honey tastes flat and uniformly sweet. Nutritionally, honey delivers quick energy while also offering antimicrobial protection, an invaluable trait during health crises. Raw honey is rich in enzymes, antioxidants, and trace minerals that processed sugars lack. In extended emergencies, when access to healthcare may be limited, honey's natural antibiotic properties could be life-saving. Storing honey is simple. Keep it in sealed glass jars at room temperature, away from sunlight. Never refrigerate, since cold accelerates crystallization. If it does crystallize, gently place the jar in warm water to restore its liquid form. Alternative natural sweeteners can act as backups. Pure maple syrup, when stored properly, lasts indefinitely and provides minerals honey doesn't. Coconut sugar has about a 2-year shelf life and offers a lower glycemic index compared to white sugar. For long-term resilience, aim to store at least 2 gallons of honey per person, along with additional sweeteners. While that may sound costly, consider this. Honey prices are climbing at a rate of 15% per month due to collapsing supplies. At current costs, you're looking at around $80 per person for sweetener security that can last generations. Number 8. Dried pasta and grains, the carbohydrate backbone for survival. Grocery store pasta aisles may still look well stocked, but behind the scenes, the wheat supply chain is under enormous pressure. Italian pasta manufacturers, who set global standards, are reporting their worst raw material shortages in 50 years. Durum wheat, the critical variety used for high-quality pasta, has seen yields crash by 41% due to extreme weather. Canada and North Dakota, which normally supply most of North America's durum wheat, have also suffered crop failures, cutting exports by more than half. At the same time, demand for pasta has surged 28% as families look for affordable, shelf-stable meals. Manufacturers aren't advertising it, but many brands have quietly changed their recipes. Some are blending in lower quality wheat, while others are reducing durum wheat content to stretch supply. That familiar box of pasta you've trusted for years may not taste the same, simply because they can't source the original ingredients at sustainable prices. Pasta's storage advantages, however, are exceptional. Properly stored dried pasta remains safe and high quality for 3 to 8 years beyond its printed date. Kept in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, it can last for decades while still cooking and tasting as intended. But shape matters. Long pastas like spaghetti and linguine are fuel efficient. They pack tightly and cook quickly. Short shapes like penne and rotini are better for holding sauces and one-pot meals. Even lasagna sheets can be broken up to adapt when specialty shapes are no longer available. Here's a cooking trick that saves resources. One-pot pasta. This method uses 60% less water than traditional boiling and creates a built-in sauce from the starches. It's a critical technique when water or fuel are in short supply. Don't stop at wheat pasta. Expand into alternatives like rice pasta for gluten-free options, which offer similar storage properties and give you flexibility when dietary needs arise. Lentil pasta offers a higher protein content, which becomes especially valuable when fresh meat is scarce. Chickpea pasta delivers a complete amino acid profile while still cooking like traditional pasta, making it both nutritious and practical. We've now covered 11 essential foods that could save your family thousands of dollars and keep you nourished through the fast-approaching crisis that most people still aren't taking seriously. Rice provides the caloric foundation. Beans supply protein security. Flour ensures baking stability. Canned proteins serve as your meat insurance. Cooking oils act as liquid gold. Salt gives you preservation power. Honey never expires. And pasta offers carbohydrate reliability. Every item was chosen based on concrete supply chain data, not speculation or fear-driven hype. But here's the reality. The window is closing quickly. By September, these foods could cost twice as much as they do today. The families who act now are quietly building their food security, while others are still hesitating, wondering if this crisis is real. Don't be the one left standing in empty grocery aisles wishing you had prepared earlier. Start small. Pick up 1 or 2 items this week. Build your reserves step by step, and rest easy knowing your household is safeguarded. The decision is yours, but time is running out.